Hey there, and welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes, sitting here with Adam Littlefield, a technician at the Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other comments during the show, we'd love to hear them. Use that open mic feature inside the WDBO app. You can also check out the website over at refreshcomputers.net or stop at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, it means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now, the man himself, Adam Littlefield.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in to yet another episode of Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. My name is Adam Littlefield. I'm one of the technicians over at the Refresh Computer Superstore. If you haven't had the chance to check it out yet, I really stress that you do. We've got a bunch of awesome deals right now on both desktop and laptop computers. You know, we've got them starting for, I think, around $250 right now. That's a Windows 11 ready computer. That's
a great deal right now.
It is.
So many of our episodes recently have been talking about the uptick in prices for so many of these components. To be able to still get a Windows 11 ready computer at that price, great steal.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of places are just getting rid of these systems still haphazardly, not really thinking about the future as far as, you know, hardware is going, what they're going to be able to get their hands on, what they can't. And, you know, it's just, we've kind of just reaped a little bit of that, and we're putting it out there. You know, these great prices. People need affordable computers. You know, Windows 11, or Windows 10, I mean, all of the security support has been dropped for that now. So anybody running on Windows 10, you're kind of at a security risk now. And with all these hardware shortages, it's made it harder and harder to get to not only a new system, a better system, but a secure system now. So we have a little bit more about the whole RAM shortages, the NAND shortages, all of that today. We're going to talk about a little bit some recent stuff that Tesla's been announcing with their robotics, and we'll talk a little bit about Windows 11 as well. I've been collecting a little bit of stuff that's been going on with their updates, and, you know, kind of just been getting to me. But starting off with these shortages, we were talking just last week, you know, when is Apple going to start sweating a little bit? You know, they've been sitting on a nice storage for a while of their DRAM and NAND. So that's the RAM in their phones and laptops and their desktops. And then the NAND, that's the storage. That they've had these LTAs, these long-term agreements with SK Hynix and Samsung that has, you know, gotten them hardware that's been at a really decent price. You know, Apple has not increased any of their prices yet, which is pretty shocking talking about Apple in the tech space. You know, they always love to try to keep up with pricings by, you know, going up a little bit every year. But they actually are starting to run to the end of these long-term agreements. They're kind of slated to the around the middle of this year.
It's like they heard us talking good about them, and they were like, oh.
It's one of those Murphy's Law situation. If something is going to go wrong, it will. You know, and that's kind of what Apple's facing right now. They've been on their production side. Their cost for about 12 gigs of DDR5 RAM, that's the newest type of RAM right now, to Apple, that their cost has been about $70. I believe to the consumer, they've been bumping that to about $120, $150.
But let's make that clear. So that's a amazing price right now for that. What we talked a little bit about what you've been monitoring the RAM that you purchased and the pricing. What did your RAM price start at, and what is it now that you're looking at?
Yeah, the kit I had bought was it was about $110, brand new when I purchased it.
So fairly comparable to what we're talking about here.
Exactly, and that's, you know, really good for 32 gigabytes of consumer RAM for a desktop computer. Whereas now that 32 gigabyte kit is almost about $800 still.
An unbelievable increase. And like we've mentioned, Apple holding strong still there at like around $70 for their 12 gigs of DDR5 RAM for their machines.
Yeah.
An unbelievable value right there, which has to be the biggest reason why they haven't had those big price increases yet.
Right, yeah, and you know, their long-term agreements that they've had with these companies predated the surge of AI hardware needs. So Apple, you know, they kind of saw the future probably. They really saw, hey, something's going to explode in the next couple of years with tech, and we got to get ourselves ready hardware-wise. I don't think they planned it this far out, though.
Right.
You know, we're looking again. I think 2028 is when the new factories for Samsung and SK Hynix are going to start having an impact on what's going to be available to the consumer. And, you know, Apple, they're looking at middle of this year, 2026, that they're going to have to start getting these new agreements in place. And they could be looking at, you know, plus or minus like 50% increases on their costs. That's not the consumer's cost of whatever their markup's going to end up being.
So what you're telling me is if you are an Apple consumer, if you're somebody who's in possibly maybe thinking about dipping your toe into getting a new MacBook or something like that, now's your time to take that plunge, right?
Right. Yeah. Apple devices that on face value, they are just pricier devices. That's how Apple has always been. They've been a premium tech company, and the future is going to really scream that as we kind of watch them go on and evolve their products, I think. Because Apple, it's gonna be a price increase. The iPhone 18 line, that's supposed to be launching around, I believe, this like September sometime this year. By then, they're going to have these new LTAs in place, and the prices are going to reflect that. It's going to be hard to be ready for that, because Apple has really just been trying to lock down storage supply and RAM supply, but they're not getting any breaks. Just like any other developers, Dell, HP, Lenovo, we talked, a couple weeks ago, probably a month or two ago now, actually, how their prices across the boards were raising 25, 30%. And unfortunately, they're still upticking slowly. It's not big jumps like, 20, 25%, but prices still are going up. So that's one of the hard things right now. And really with how Apple is starting to face this, the entire smartphone market is even starting to get this impact, where there's going to be a forecasted like 6 to 7% price increase on just smartphones that already have been produced. Ones that are for sale now, like the I believe the Samsung S25 line, the prices on that will probably be going up soon. And
it'll be interesting to see, as you mentioned, how this affects not just the companies that make the phones, but also the companies that are supplying your network for these phones. So you see all the deals all the time from the big networks, the big carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. Sign up with us and get a free phone. I wonder if these price increases could affect those deals, if maybe the frequency of those deals possibly coming up.
Right. And, it's going to be hard to see that lost, because that's kind of always been the allure to switching phone companies is switch to us, open a line, get a free phone on us. That's always been the thing. But, phone companies, they can't be throwing hardware out left and right like that anymore. Even their, cheaper models now. I know T-Mobile has a bunch of, how do they call it, budget-friendly phones that are, maybe $5 a month on your contract, or even just free. And those devices are low-end devices. They've got 8 gigabytes of RAM and 32 to 64 gigabytes of storage. That's it. Even those phones are going to start becoming rare because of just the demand on hardware. And it's going to actually be shown probably that we're going to see that shift to where companies are only going to be selling their high-end premium devices. There's not going to be many budget options, because to a company, they're just going to see that as a waste of money at that point.
Now, for Apple, that's not going to be a real problem. Apple really only carries those premium items. But if you look at a company like Samsung has 5 or 6 different tiers of their cell phone line that you can enter the market with, right?
Right, yeah. They've got the A series, which is considered their budget-friendly series. I think my parents are still using A18s, complaining every other day that the storage is full on them, and they're, budget phones. That's what they are. But then you compare to Samsung's flagship phones, like their S series line. That's their premium model. That's the model that Samsung wants people to buy. The A series is there to kind of get people into using their phones, but they want people using the S line. Then you have the Z line. That's kind of their, I'd say, experimental line.
I was going to say
almost.
Experimental, yeah.
Yeah, with all the folding phones, the Z Flip, the Z Fold. A price announcement was just made on the Z Trifold, actually. That phone's going to be priced at $2,900 US.
My goodness.
$3,000 for a phone that can fold twice.
Well, it's trifold, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, $3,000 makes sense for
it does,
trifold.
$1,000 per fold. But, look at Samsung. They're really just still pushing those kinds of devices where, they are on the brink. They are on the face of seeing these shortages. They're seeing their supplies dwindling. They're seeing, 70% of our factory's capacity is now reserved to these AI data centers. We only have 30% of our original capacity for the rest of the world, for people. Cell phones, laptops. I know Samsung makes a lot of their own laptop devices now. Their fridges,
Right.
We talked about that before, how your fridges now require RAM.
I need to make a roast, but I don't have enough RAM.
I'm sorry, you don't have enough RAM to load that recipe.
Right.
So, we're still keeping up with this RAM shortages, and it was only only a matter of time before Apple started seeing it. But, we still talked last show a little bit about Apple too, and their Apple Silicon has been some of the best. So I think as we see Apple transition into this period of more expensive hardware, I really do hope to see that their M chips really start utilizing it better. We see phones right now that are released with 12, 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's about as much RAM as you need for a desktop computer anymore. 8 is the minimum, I would say, for a Windows 11 computer. Windows 11 can run on it. You can use it for some light, internet browsing, like Word documents even. But when it comes to more heavier daily use, 16 is what you need, and that's what smartphones need now. And even with my S23 Ultra, I believe this one has, I think it's 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it doesn't feel like enough. I have to restart the phone every day, otherwise it starts to feel just more choppy now.
Yeah, no, I just recently got the alert on my phone. I believe we have the same phone, the S23 Ultra there. And it let me know, like, hey, you need to start restarting this more often because we're starting to get a little full here.
Yeah, I've turned on like all the device protection stuff to help with, RAM control. It also helps with battery health, restarting the phone, not letting the battery charge up to 100% until it kind of knows my routine. I get up at this time. It needs to be at 100% at that time. Samsung, it looks like they're trying to at least preserve a little bit of the device. But again, their OS is starting to take away for the new phones that are coming out.
Right.
So I'm hoping Apple's going to go in the opposite direction of that. Apple's always been the one to go in the opposite direction of kind of what tech goes to. But even with the newer Samsung phones, they're going to have a new type of screen on them. So they're actually going to be designed with a light refractive screen so you can have privacy shaders over your phone. So a lot of people probably know those privacy screen protectors you can buy on Amazon for, $10, $15. People looking at your phone from the side, they see nothing. But if you're looking at it straight on, you can view the screen. Samsung's, pushing the envelope again. They're making their OLED screen so intricate that they can make it so when a notification pops up at the top of your phone, the pixels will only let you see that notification straight on, not from the side.
That's impressive.
It is. They're making a lot of different cool features of their phone.
That's always been Samsung's call, right? They were always trying to make those weird next step level things that nobody's really thinking about, and then in a couple of years Apple will adopt it, and then everybody's very excited about it, right?
Exactly. And that really happened, if you remember, with Bixby. Bixby was a really big assistant when it first came to Samsung. Apple, a couple years later, really started building Siri, trying to get Siri big. And, now Apple's having that partnership with Google to, get Siri Gemini powered. My concern, though, is what the RAM usage on the iPhone is going to be when you integrate a fully autonomous AI like that.
And again, it's supposed to be an off-network AI assistant.
Right.
So it is on your phone that it is giving you access to this AI assistant, correct?
Right. Yeah, it's supposed to be on the phone itself. There's supposed to be an NPU integrated into the next iPhone's processor to really help with that. And that's something that Apple has stressed, that it's off network, it's on device. Again, what happens on iPhone stays on iPhone. I love that saying because that's always something to call them out on. Because now that they're branding that as how the AI is going to be, how is the phone going to act?
Right.
Because when I'm pulling up, when I'm using, say, for example, Gemini, that's local to my phone running, it gets a little choppy if I'm trying to do something while Gemini's thinking in the background, and it's noticeable.
Yep.
So, we have a bunch of just more stuff coming up in the show. But again, I want to give a big shout out to our website, refreshcomputers.net, that if you go there, you can see our whole live inventory. Anything new that we get scanned into our system, immediately appears on the website. So that if you see it on the website, it's in stock. It's also live, so if we have a customer purchase the very last of a model that we have, it pulls it off of the website. We don't try to leave it on there because it's just not there anymore. We can't promise a product that we don't have on hand. We have a bunch of other models too, more than we can even physically fit on our tables at the store right now. I've had some customers always asking, and it's like, look, the website is a full catalog. While you're there, listen to the podcast while you're doing some shopping. This whole show is in entirety about 40 minutes long without ads, so I would definitely say give that a listen to as well. My name's been Adam Littlefield. We'll be getting back to this just after this break.
More tech talk coming up here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with Adam Littlefield from the Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other comments during the show, leave an open mic using the WDBO app. And now, back to Adam.
Well, thank you, Greg. And again, thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. We talked a little bit about Apple losing their stock of RAM and DRAM, the NAND storage, all of that. If you missed any of that, I would suggest going to listen to the podcast on refreshcomputers.net. Click that little podcast link in the top right corner. Listen to that whole segment. You know, we talked last week about how Apple's been doing pretty good, and I think that was calling the kettle black at this point because now they have the flip.
Their ears were burning while we were talking about it.
But this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about Tesla. Announcement came out just a couple days ago from Elon Musk that they're actually going to be retiring their flagship vehicles, the Model S and the Model X, the production, to actually start making more production room. They're actually going to be changing their entire production line for the S and the X to be for the Optimus robot that Tesla's been developing for, years now. And this has been kind of something that Tesla's been trying to push, is this Optimus robot, this humanoid robot that they're saying is going to be able to take care of monotonous chores and the day-to-day around the house stuff, air quotes there. But even Elon mentioned in his recent earnings call that Optimus is not doing any useful work at this time. It's been put in their factories as kind of like a showpiece, sweeping maybe. That's about it.
Probably not sweeping well either at this point.
No, and these are new iterations that they just kind of put there to just keep going as they depreciate old versions, but it's not materially deployed at all internally for what uses it could be. I've seen Optimus was talked about a laundry robot, the dishes robot, mopping and brooming up the house, sweeping up the house. But right now, again, we're still seeing this really awkward push where we're not getting this kind of stuff in our homes. We've talked before about AI, how we're trying to utilize it. There's this big bubble of all this growth of AI, but where is it being used? And this is, I think, going to be one of those pushes, and it's one of those awkward pushes, I think, too. This isn't something I expected out of Tesla to just discontinue total models, especially ones that kind of flagshipped the automotive part of Tesla.
Yeah, they were the very early on. Those were the ones that you looked at for Tesla. So
yeah, and Tesla, they're saying that they're going to be supporting those models definitely. So that's a very good thing. That's very non-tech like of them. Most companies, when they retire a model, that support ends in 3 months. Move on. Tesla, they're putting their best foot forward, keeping up with those models, but it's still odd to me that they're pushing for this kind of robotics when we don't even have a concept yet of what really we're going to be able to use this for in our real life space.
Right, a continued real world application. I get the novelty of it, folding your laundry and things like that, but are you really going to be willing to spend the price tag on something like this to do those kinds of tasks?
Right.
And if that is their only plan for them, then I don't see it. It's going to be another one of those items that we talked about last week that only the rich of the rich can really afford and implement in any kind of real fashion.
Yeah.
And it just kind of is one of those things that's there.
Yeah, and Tesla, they have this whole shift that they're starting to do, this whole self-described transition that they're going from a hardware-centric automaker, basically, our computers in a car, to a physical AI company. And that is shown so far in their cybercabs. Any of the Tesla models that have full self-driving, the autonomy that's coming with that. Tesla also does their energy storage with their power walls. They do solar infrastructure. So Tesla is trying to build this physical AI company, this hardware AI company where you've got robots that are doing, stuff for you. You've got cars that are driving themselves. You've got this electrical infrastructure that Tesla has built because of solar. And not only that, then you have their storage on the back end.
Right.
So they're really trying to get to be an all-in-one inclusive company, but the AI has to shift right.
And it'll be interesting to see after the news that came out today where there's the possibility of a merger between the multiple Elon Musk companies, XAI, SpaceX, and Tesla. We'll see how that news develops. You've been listening to Tech Talk right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Hey there, and welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with Adam Littlefield from the Refresh Computer Superstore. You can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other comments during the show, we'd love to hear them. Use that open mic feature inside the WDBO app. You can also check out the website over at refreshcomputers.net or stop in at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, it means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now to Adam Littlefield.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode. This has been a really eventful episode as far as, Apple, Tesla discontinuing stuff. If you want to hear any of that, if you've missed any of that, I really implore you go listen to that podcast at refreshcomputers.net. Click that podcast link in the top right corner. That gives you not just this episode and about 40 minutes long. It gives all of our episodes, back the couple years now that we've been doing this show. It's not just been me that's been doing this show. It's been Dave. He's had others doing this as well. There's been a lot of information back then that I would say is still good to listen to. Even I myself, I'll sometimes go back and listen to, what was talked about years ago compared to where it is now, so I can get an idea,
right.
of
Nice.
What's been growing.
It's really nice to have that library, especially with all the stuff that we've been talking about earlier as far as the chipsets and the cost of going up for those, just to kind of see the progression of that conversation. And you can even go further back with our AI talks that have continued too.
Right, yeah, you can see, from the beginning when we first started talking about where AI was coming, it was just on the horizon there. We didn't think it was going to be where it is today. But still, you can watch and listen to that progression at 40 minutes each on those episodes. They've got a lot of information. But in this segment right now, I want to talk a little bit about Windows 11.
Our old friend Windows 11.
The only friend, Windows 11. We don't have any other supported Windows versions besides some corporate versions, I think, of 10 still. Those, I think, are still supported, but those are impossible for consumers to really get their hands on, that enterprise level stuff. But Windows 11, it's been a wacky operating system. These past couple of years I've been using it. I have had some of the weirdest interactions with it, and I really wonder who is testing some of these updates that Windows has been pushing lately. We just had a recent update come out that I believe it was back in October that released that broke the Windows recovery environment. Mm-hmm. So say, you go to use your computer one day, something's just happened to it. Something's corrupted. You got to get into the recovery environment. If you're somebody that knows a little bit about computers, you know how to get in there. You know the power that environment has. Well, the October update just said you can't use that anymore because your keyboard and your mouse don't work anymore. That was one of the big things that happened with Windows 11 back in October. Again, just when Windows 10 support was dropped too, mind you. That was, I believe, the day after that update came out, broke a bunch of stuff to these people that are just newly moving into 11 from 10.
And it's so interesting for some of these products. You talk about Windows 11 and you think of it being the latest and greatest and brand new.
Yeah.
So much of those back-end processes are built on old development.
They are.
So maybe it just didn't like the fact that you had a USB mouse. Maybe
exactly.
It liked the fact maybe you needed to go back to the old pin connectors is what it was looking for.
The old PS2 connector, right?
It's like, why? This isn't a mouse.
And you know what? That is our best default when we're working on something in our store, is if a keyboard and mouse is not working, the USB ports aren't working, and that computer has a PS2 port, you can almost guarantee you're going to plug something into that and turn the computer on, and it'll work.
Right.
And I believe even on some systems, the PS2 connectors, those were not working.
That's terrifying.
So that goes beyond, the hardware of the computer right down to the software in Windows 11. But we have more bugs right now, even with the most latest update, I believe early this month, January. We had an update come out that's been causing boot failures. It's been causing an error called an unmountable boot volume. It's a blue screen of death, or I guess now it's the black screen of death,
it's
actually,
just a black
isn't it?
It's so anticlimactic.
It
If
is.
there's something wrong with my computer, I want a blue screen.
I want a blue screen with a frowny face.
Right, exactly.
I want to know what's going on. But, with this latest update, people's computers restarted, and it just says, oh, I can't boot now. And this was actually something that's recorded both not on just consumer level copies of Windows 11 Home and Pro, but we're seeing this as on the enterprise levels as well. Large industries are having this issue where all they did was push an update, went home, came back, well, the entire office is down. This office of 1,000 people is down because of an issue like this. But, it gets even worse than that, because this update also had a shutdown issue where you almost couldn't even turn off the computer. Most of my customers, when I talk to them, they tell me at the end of the night they do shut their computers down, and that's always a good habit to be into if you're not using it every single day and having to have it ready to go. Shutting it down just, disconnects it from the rest of the world, lets it sit, just be there, be dormant. The problem is with the latest Windows 11 update now, they entirely broke down the shutdown and hibernate power functions. So instead of the computer actually entering hibernation or shutting down, whatever you're trying to have it do, the computer just restarts and just sits there with the fans on. That's it. There's no display that comes out of it. There's no other signs of life. Even like keyboards won't process inputs of like turning on caps lock, how some keyboards have a light that'll come on with that. Not even that, but the computer will still sit there running after you've shut it down, quote unquote. And, this just really just turns back around and has me asking that question again. Who is testing these? We had, I believe it was CrowdStrike about a year ago that had a software update that went out, and that crippled, millions of computers across airliners, offices. So many places were impacted by that. We also had Verizon. That was a very recent one where Verizon actually pushed just a system update, a network configuration update to their network. No testing beyond that. They just pushed it from development to the live, and millions of devices service was interrupted because of that. They were basically told, hey, you don't really know how to call home anymore. Sorry. That's it. That's all Verizon had. And, seeing those kinds of issues come about, we're starting to really get into this era now where crippling bugs are coming to consumer updates. With Windows 11, Greg, even you and I were talking earlier, NVIDIA graphics on Windows 11 right now. Any computer that's utilizing some sort of NVIDIA graphics are having a lot of performance issues now.
Right.
And the blame on that, instead of Windows making a change, Microsoft making a change for that, that's been pushed to NVIDIA to fix it.
They said update your drivers. That's not our problem right now. We have other problems that we've been pushing out.
We have other problems, like focusing on our Copilot AI and how we're going to shove it into every computer.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of these weird shifts with Windows that I personally don't like all these bugs, because I always used to love being on the forefront of updates. I would always subscribe to the latest updates, the preview updates, because I liked to see what was coming up, and I knew there'd be a little bug here or there, but total systems of Windows not working kind of kills it for me. Mm-hmm. I'm even seeing now that just a day or so ago, talking with my manager, he had a customer who's been having just tons of issues with Outlook. Outlook not closing. When you hit the X, it actually stays in the background, so that's using resources, and you can't reopen it until you close it with Task Manager, which a lot of users don't really know how to dig in to do that. And that all goes back to cloud storage stuff now. Right. Apparently with Windows 11's cloud storage and OneDrive and Dropbox, those are the two big ones I've seen, but I believe iCloud is another one that functions on Windows. Those apps syncing anything are screwing up apps like Outlook, Notepad, WordPad, even some Office programs now. And they're just causing them to either freeze and be unresponsive, so the window goes gray, has that little loading wheel that you don't know how long it's going to sit there for. But Outlook is getting the worst one, because once you close it, if you don't know you have to go into Task Manager to close it, you have to turn your whole computer off and restart it.
Oh, no.
But even then, Windows has that bug where it may not even restart.
Right.
It may just sit there and looking at you.
Stuck in a loop and says,
exactly.
That's not how we do this anymore.
Right. I'm kind of hoping, just with everything that we have going on right now, these hardware shortages, all of this going on, I hope that we actually see Windows 11 get better. We talked, I believe it was last episode or the episode before that, we were talking about Windows 11 Lite, how that may be something that has to come sooner rather than later. But with some of these bugs, I don't know if I could trust Microsoft splitting their team in two.
Right. Yeah.
to develop that.
There once was a time where you could get an entire video game on one cartridge.
Right.
And you would never get an update for it because the game was complete and they had already worked out the bugs. And if
Right.
there were bugs, they were very small and insignificant, and you had to work to try and find them as an Easter egg.
Exactly.
Now, it seems like anytime anything gets pushed out, it's a trial version.
It is.
Everyone is trying to get everyone to trial version all of their products at this time. And again, this goes beyond Windows 11 at this point. This talks about other software that you get as well.
Software, games even.
Yeah, so much of it is just to go ahead and you will be our real world test on it.
Right.
The millions of consumers that we are having pay a premium price for this product. And it's really becoming an extreme inconvenience on the consumer. I'm sure you're seeing it a lot with a lot of people coming in.
Yeah, we have a lot of gaming computers come in just saying, hey, I'm running out of storage. I don't know how I'm running out of storage. We go in and take a look, and, Call of Duty, for example, the installation size of that is almost 400 gigabytes.
Right.
I remember back when Call of Duty used to be loaded on a CD, one CD that you could stick into a PS3, and that was it.
And you could play the entire game.
Exactly. You don't have to download half of the game, online because the CD only has a license key now instead of the actual game. So that's a very good point, actually, is we're seeing a big shift of that, and a lot of reliability on that is falling to the internet, because so many consumers now have the internet in their homes. We're almost kind of the testers
right.
to see what works and what doesn't in software. And, this is broke, push you an update over the internet. You'll get it in about, maybe a day or so when it goes live.
And sometimes that's okay. I can understand that for certain circumstances, or if you're a user that's opted into that program with Windows Updates. Windows Updates previously, and I believe still does, offers that option where if you want to be a testing user, check this box. We'll push the update for you, and if there's any issues, make sure your computer's set to report back to us any issues.
Right.
Now it's everything. It is everything that comes in, and it's, again, I don't know if I'm in the minority in this, but I don't like it.
I don't either.
I can only assume that other people don't like this.
Right.
So on what scheme do these companies think this is the right method to get this tested to maintain our consumer base? Is it just that they believe that they are above touch, that no matter what they do, people are going to need Windows? So why don't we just go ahead and run this update, rush this update out there, and do our tests with our consumers who, again, paid that premium price for a product that's supposed to work?
Right. And that's a really good point, is a lot of companies now are pushing the QA of software onto the consumer. And if something breaks, again, you've got the internet, you've got a fallback, you can push an update, and that'll just, sprinkle some pixie dust and just fixes everything. That's what companies want. To them, they just see it as, dollar signs. They don't have to pay people to work on this Q&A. But I'm going to be honest, games now have been moving to like $70, almost $80 for some games. I don't want to pay almost $100 on a game to beta test it.
Right.
That goes beyond games too. There's a lot of programs out there now that are starting to just push early access and, pay $50 and you won't pay the full price of the program when we fully release it. And they never fully release it.
Right.
There's a lot of games that are like that too, that curb on that alpha early access naming scheme to really allure people in and say, hey, this is a good price. We're developing this. There's going to be issues, the face value. Give us $60, which is the same price as a fully developed game, but give us $60 and you'll get a really good game in the end.
At some point, one day.
Exactly.
We promise.
And, that's the scary thing now is we see these hardware shortages ramping up, and they are on the tail end right now on the market. And we've got right in front of us software that sometimes requires 16, 32, 64 gigabytes of RAM or hundreds of gigabytes of storage that we're not going to have access soon to.
Are you like me? Are you fed up with being an unpaid beta tester? Use that open mic feature inside the WDBO app. We'd love to hear your rants and raves about this topic or any other topic that we've had on the show here today. You've been listening to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with Adam Littlefield from the Refresh Computer Superstore. You can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8255. 8200. You can also check out their website over at refreshcomputers.net. And now back to the beta tester himself, Adam Littlefield.
Well, thank you, Greg, and all of your beta testing that you've done in the
Long
past.
experience.
And again, thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode and with Refresh Computers. My name's Adam. I'm one of the technicians at Refresh Computers. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have met me by now. I've met a lot of you guys, but if you're listening, you haven't met me yet, come by to Refresh Computers. I'm normally there 4 days out of the 6 days we're open. You'll most likely catch me. I'm there 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on most days. So come by, say hi. We can check out some of the inventory if you want to, talk about what you've got going on, anything like that. We were talking a little bit about beta testing in that last
that Windows
last
11
segment.
conversation turned into a beta testing venting session.
Right, and it's a good venting because it's valid. Because there are a lot of these big companies, Greg, that we're talking about pushing these public updates to the masses and using the masses as beta testing. But a lot of these companies have their own beta testing programs that are outside of the main updates that normal users will receive. Apple, for example, has the Apple Beta Software Program that you can register for, and you get public test builds and developer builds of iOS, macOS, watchOS, almost any OS that Apple makes. You can be a beta tester. Whereas Apple's software tends to come out pretty well baked. They don't come out with a lot of bugs. Whereas you have Microsoft. They have the Windows Insider program, which is used to test preview builds of Windows 11, for example. I believe some of the Office programs, Edge, you can get into their testing program, just enrolling to it. But Microsoft really pushes these half-baked updates that really make me wonder if people actually use this program.
Everyone's in the Insider program. Yeah.
And the interesting part with Microsoft, too, is I remember a metric I found once about Microsoft's Feedback Hub. That's basically anytime you're in their beta program, their insider program, you are pushed to the Feedback Hub. That if you find a bug, if you find something, even as a regular user, use the Feedback Hub. And a metric I found was less than 1% of Windows systems have opened the Feedback Hub once.
Oh, no.
So it is something that is so buried there, Microsoft's not even taking it. It might as well be a suggestion box that nobody ever checks in an office.
Right, the one by the bathroom door, yeah.
Exactly. We also have Google. They offer a Android beta program to test updates on their Pixel devices. And that's something really Google-orientated. I don't really think Samsung has a beta program you can be in unless you kind of pay for it, which almost sounds counterintuitive to me. Why would I, as a consumer, pay to get a software that's not really ready to go?
I would love to work on the non-working version of your operating system. That sounds like a great time.
Right.
Here's my money.
And that's the thing. That's an entire flip of the script right there, because instead of the company paying you to test all these bugs and these frustrations that'll come out of it, well, you're paying the company to test their software for them instead. And, Greg, you and I talked a little bit on the break. You did beta testing way back when. And even then, you were probably compensated for that.
Right, exactly. It was a lot of fun. So, again, if you're here in Central Florida, you know that the Tiburon Studios, EA Sports, are located here in Central Florida. Mm-hmm. And when I first moved out here, I took the opportunity, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a great time. I signed up for beta testing with EA Sports. So there was one season before the Madden program came out over the summer. Mm-hmm. They had a bunch of us come in, and we tested out the new version of Madden, and they had a specific skill they wanted us to test on the game so they could get some more dynamics out of it. And at the end of it, they gave you a free copy of a game that they had available. So, that's the kind of beta testing that should be done. That's how it should be done, right?
That's how QA should be, not pushing it to the masses and hearing about uproar on social media. That's a big part of where we've gone now, is not the Microsoft Feedback Hub, which, again, less than 1% of Windows 11 computers have ever opened. A lot of people do run to social media, and that's where a lot of these big companies are looking now for these reports of how their software is doing. So I think we're getting to the end of the show now. It's been a really fun one. If you missed any of that, again, listen to the podcast, refreshcomputers.net. Check out our inventory as well. My name has been Adam Littlefield, and we'll speak to you guys again next week.